Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast, where we focus on how authors found success, looking at strategies that have taken them to the top of the bestseller charts, as well as what they've learned from their mistakes. Because being an indie author is more than knowing the latest marketing trend. It's about being innovative and creative and learning from your mistakes. Your co-hosts, Jamie Albright and Sarah Rosette, couldn't be more different. In fact, they're a study in contrasts. However, despite all of their differences, they agree that sharing what they wish they'd known, both the good and the bad, is the key to moving forward. Let's get to the show.
Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sara Rosette.
And I'm Jamie Albright.
And today we're going to interview each other.
Yay!
So, what's going on this week for you, Jamie?
Nothing, just work, just work. Just trying to get my life in order and together and keep moving forward on this book.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing, I'm in the crappy middle, and so that's always so hard.
The saggy middle is awful.
Yeah, I don't call it saggy. I call it something else.
But we're keeping this a clean podcast.
We're trying to keep this clean, so yeah, it's and I'll find myself getting really pretty discouraged in the middle. So yeah. So I'm trying to keep my spirits up.
Yeah, me too. I'm just starting, so that's always more exciting.
Oh yeah, that is exciting.
Yeah, trying to get back into the routine after the holidays and get everything going again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of once everybody goes back to their normal routine, it'll be a lot easier for me.
You have kids in college, or college and graduate school, so they're coming home.
Yeah, they invade, and then the house is so full.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's fun, but it's a totally different routine.
Yeah.
So
we're going to interview each other and find out our deepest, darkest secrets, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sort of. Within reason.
Within reason, yeah.
So why don't we talk about how we got into writing? So
okay.
Yeah. So you go first. If you...
Okay, I'll go first. I got into writing late in my life. I did not write anything until I was in my late 40s. I didn't have very good grammar, and so I never felt like I could write anything. But I like to tell stories, and so it was my reading buddy's birthday, and I thought, I know I'll write Jennifer a book for her birthday because she doesn't care if I have bad grammar, and it'll be a funny little joke thing. And I don't know, I just thought, how hard can it be? I had 3 months. Yeah.
As one does, right?
Yeah, as one does. And that's what started it. I wrote myself in a corner with that book really fast. But she and I then talked about it, and we sort of loosely planned my first book, Running from a Rock Star. And
that's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. How about you?
Well, I've always loved to read, and I was always thinking up stories and descriptions of things, but I never really wrote them down that much. I had a couple of things that I wrote down when I was a kid, but I would never get past like chapter 2. Mm-hmm. I got stuck in that saggy middle, saggy middle. Yeah. But so I put that aside, and I did all these other jobs where I used writing in my jobs. Mm-hmm. And our kids were little, and my husband started talking about one of us going back to school, to graduate school, to get a degree. And my first thought instinctively was, if I'm going to spend time on something, I don't want it to be going to graduate school. I want to write a book. Yeah. And so,
wow, that's so funny.
Yeah. And that, it's like sometimes you come up against something and that shows you what you really want, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, and I thought my life is only going to get busier from this point on. It's not going to get less busy. So I just have to figure out a way to write, sometime during the day. So, so I knew I wanted to write a mystery because I loved mysteries. And I'd found cozies, and they seemed to fit with me. And like I thought I could write one of those. And I thought I could possibly sell one of those because that was back in the traditional publishing days. And so I worked at it for a couple of years and went to writers' conferences, and finally got an agent and got the book finished, got an agent and they sold it. And so my first book came out in 2006. So
Wow.
got going then. And my whole goal the whole time was for this to be a career. I wanted to make money from my writing, and I wanted to have it be my job. I didn't want it to be like a little side hustle. But for years, that's what it was, because it was traditional, and you just didn't make that much money with traditional publishing. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Right. Well, what was your first big success?
Well, I would say it was after I transitioned to indie publishing and I managed to get a Bookbub, because there were certain things that I really wanted to try and do with my traditional publisher, and I would suggest things and then nothing would happen. And so when I got that Bookbub, and I think it was a paid one back in the early days, and I had a huge number of downloads. And I remember just thinking, see, I do know what I'm doing. So that was pretty cool. And I felt like, okay, I think I can make this work.
Right. So for our listeners, not our readers, our listeners, who may not know what a Bookbub is, can you tell them?
So Bookbub is an advertising platform that you can apply to them, and they will advertise your book to their list of readers. So they have this huge number of readers in very specific categories, and you can say, I would like to advertise to mystery readers, and you put your book on sale. They promote it for you basically to their list, and it can just really just take you to a whole nother level, especially back then. This was in like 2014 and 2015.
For a long time, they've been the holy grail of advertising. People say now they have a little bit of mixed results, but I still think I'd still pay the money. If they take my money, I would still do one, because I think that they are pretty powerful still.
Yeah, I agree. So what about you? What was your first big success?
I would have to say my first book was my first big success.
Which is a huge accomplishment.
It is. But, it wasn't like I just put it up. I spent a year learning indie publishing before I put the first book up. So I learned to advertise, and I learned to identify my readers and get the book in front of the right readers and write sort of to market. I really wrote the book I wanted to read. I was fortunate enough that there were a lot of other people that wanted to read that kind of book too. But yeah, that first book, it launched into the 1,000, I think it was 1,030 or something. And it was just, crazy.
And it was so good.
So thank you. Thank you. But,
it's an awesome book.
So thank you. So yeah, it really, I really was just really fortunate. I worked really hard, but there's always an element of luck to those things too. So
yeah, but you worked awfully hard to get it there.
I did. Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is that, we'll talk about
We'll come to that. Yeah. So one of our favorite questions to ask everybody is, what was the biggest wish I'd known then moment? So do you want me to talk about that first, or do you want to go first?
I'll go first, because I was about to say it. So here's the deal. This is what I wish I'd known. I was older when I started this, had very little tech experience, and I really thought that I could not do some of the things that other authors were doing, because I had, so little tech experience. But I wish I'd known in those early days that I could do those things. There's YouTube videos, there are other authors, and eventually that's what I got to, and had either friends help me, or I watched YouTube videos and learned to do it. I'd screw it up and then I'd do it right. But I let that sort of freeze me a little bit, and not maybe pursue some things that I could have done earlier, but I was afraid to do them because I didn't think I could learn to do them.
I came from working in an office. Lots of my jobs were office jobs, and I was used to having somebody to go to say, hey, I don't know how to do this. When you're indie, you have nothing. And it's like you're on your own, and YouTube is your friend. I've used that many a time.
It is. It's true. You can just learn anything on YouTube. So I've used it. And the first big thing that I had to first hurdle I had to jump was setting up my MailChimp and the Prolific Works link that I was using for a promo. Oh my gosh, it was horrible. I mean, I spent several days trying to do it. I couldn't figure it out. And I just thought, well, I'm going to have to give up. But then I thought, no, I can do this. I can do this. And so I asked a friend to help me. I watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and then, you know, the rest is history sort of thing. But yeah, it really kind of, before I published, I really sort of put some things aside thinking I won't be able to do those things. I can do these things, but I can't do those things because they required some tech stuff that I didn't know. But
see, and look at you now. You're like the ads guru lady.
Which that is like very, I mean,
it's very detailed, and there's lots of variables, and you know, you do great with that.
No, thanks. How about you? What's your biggest wish I'd known?
Well, looking back, I think I wish that I had not been so head in the sand with traditional publishing. And I had, at least if I had had a clue what was coming with indie, with the disruption, with ebooks, I could have been doing some things ahead of time because I just had no clue. And the first I heard of it was a couple of my writer friends were talking about they were able to pay their mortgage with their indie stuff. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. I mean, that was like good money. And one of them lived in California. So, you know, it wasn't cheap. So I started thinking, once I realized what was going on, and I tested it out with a few short stories, and I was making money, and I was like, oh my gosh, but I had no content that I owned. I had no IP because everything was licensed to my traditional publisher. So I essentially had to start over. So I came up, you know, I had a series idea that the traditional publisher wasn't interested in. And so I decided, okay, I'll do that. And, you know, but if I had had a clue, I could have been preparing, because I had friends that they were dropped by their publisher and they got their books back. And at that time, you know, that was like a horrible thing to happen.
The worst thing that could happen.
Yes, it was like the end of the world. But then when indie came, they've had 6 books they put up, and they were immediately making money because there was so little content. You know? So, and I had to totally start over with like a newsletter, because back in the olden days, we had people sign up and they would give us their mailing address, and we would send a postcard.
Physical address.
And if I'd had even a thought, I could have said, oh, here, also give me your email address, you know, and I could have been collecting those. So it's like I had to, like I was a brand new baby author starting over, even though I had people who were looking for my books. I totally had to start over. So basically that's taught me, I'm not one of those people who thinks and looks to the future, but it's taught me to find people who are good at that and listen to them.
Exactly. And then do what they say. You know,
basically just follow along.
Have you ever had a mistake that turned out to be a good thing?
Oh, well, yeah, the indie thing. So see above. So basically because I didn't see that coming, I essentially had to start over. So I feel like in the end, that's been a good thing, because like now I have new content and I've learned how to do all this myself. So it's, you know, if I could go back and do it a little bit differently, it would make the transition smoother, but I'm very happy where I am. So, What about you?
Oh, so many things. But I think that one of the biggest is you know, Chris Fox is sort of my go-to when I have some publishing questions, and he's nice enough to answer my questions. But with my second book, I had asked him I had heard an interview with him about putting his book on pre-order. And back then you really weren't, because if you were in Kindle Unlimited, but I misunderstood and thought I should put my my second book up for pre-order at 99 cents. And
and now you're like, oh my goodness.
I mean, it turned out to be a good thing, but I remember messaging him and saying, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I've got like 400 pre-orders for my book at 99 cents. And he was like, I never said to do I wouldn't have done that. And I was like, oh my gosh. But it did turn out to be a good thing. And I think it really did help me in the ranks. And that book launched below 1,000. And so it didn't hurt me. But it turned out okay. It turned out to be a good thing because I did get a lot of readership. I mean, a lot of new readers, but that book got into a lot of hands because it was 99 cents and stuff. But it turned out good, but it was a mistake. I shouldn't have done it. So
but it was okay. Yeah, and that's the thing is most things, even though we look back and go, oh, that's not what we would have wanted to do, but either we learned something from it, or it maybe wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. So
I remember exactly where I was when I read the email from him that said I wouldn't have done that. And I just stood there and went, oh my gosh.
Oh no.
Again, we're trying to keep this podcast clean. But there were some things said that I can't repeat.
That we can't repeat right now.
Yeah, we can't repeat them. Yeah.
That's funny. So another one of our favorite questions is, has there been something that you thought was a great idea? Like you were just so excited. Yeah. And then later you look back and you went, oh, that wasn't quite the best choice.
Yeah. I think mine has to be that same thing because I knew I was going to launch at 99 cents. It was the pre-order thing. He wouldn't have put the pre-order on, basically, is what he was saying. But that 99-cent launch, I won't ever do that again.
Yeah, basically you did pre-orders before pre-orders were cool.
Yes, I did pre-orders before pre-orders were cool. And it did. I mean, the whole 99-cent thing did work. I just wouldn't do it again. My books are worth more than that. I don't think I have to do that to, I'll tell you one that, I just don't think I have to do that. I think that launching books at $2.99 for me works really well. And that was a bad 2 weeks because I had scheduled a bunch of promos during that launch. So I couldn't raise the price, but I just was watching money fly out the window. I mean, literally, because I sold so many books. And now I know that I would have probably sold the same amount at $2.99. And
but that only comes with experience.
Yeah, only with experience. Yeah.
So,
how about you?
And you've tried it. Well, for me, something that I thought was really good, then later it turned out to be not so great, was with my first series. My first book was called Elusive. And I thought it wasn't a cozy, it wasn't romance, it wasn't a thriller. It was it was classic romantic suspense, like a throwback to Elizabeth Peters, Mary Stuart type of story. But there's nothing like that right now. There's no category like that in Amazon or on any of the bookstores. So I thought what I'll do is I'll put an illustrated cover on it because I want to appeal to cozy readers, because I want to pull some of them in if I can. And I'll put it in romantic suspense, romantic suspense. And that way maybe I'll get some romance readers. So I did all that. And my other thing was there's all this stuff when you're traditionally published about having a non-compete clause, and you don't want to compete with your books from your traditional publisher. So one thing I told my cover artist was to go in any direction, just not like my cozies, like to make sure it doesn't look like a cozy. So it didn't look like a cozy. And it got picked up by iBooks for one of their promotions. And so I get the email from Drafted Digital, hey, it's going to be in this promotion. So I go look at it on the day of the promotion, and there's my book, and it's an illustrated cover, fun, happy, travel. And then every other book is a man chest. Oh. And I'm like, oh, one thing is not like the other here.
No, it is not. It is not. And your books are not man chest books. So.
No, and they're not romantic suspense the way it's defined now, you know. Right. So that was a mistake that I look back on and go, that did not need to be in that category. And I've since changed the covers. And it took me a while to figure it out. And what happened was I applied for that Bookbub that I eventually got. And they said, well, we like it and we want to run it in cozies. And I was like, but it's not a cozy. And so the answer was basically, that's the closest thing it is. And I was like, okay. So that helped me figure that out. So So, and it doesn't really fit in any genre cleanly. So I think the lesson from that is just find the one you're closest to and kind of go with that. So that was my Yeah, I could have done better on that.
I thought that was such a good idea, but no, it didn't.
Yeah, I thought I was being so clever. And the other thing I learned is don't try and pull readers from like here and here, from romance and thriller and mystery. Just focus on one, you know?
I agree. I agree. I always tell people that you can be somewhat unique, but you really don't want to be that unique in your genre. Your books, you know, I mean, if you're super unique, I mean, the worst thing anybody can say to me is, well, there's nothing like my book out there. And I just want to say, I'm
Oh,
so
no.
sorry. Yeah, because you got to fit in somewhere. Yeah.
Right. Because people want to be able to look at your book and go, oh, that's like X.
Yes.
And either I like X or I don't. And that helps them decide.
Yeah. When they're confused, they just move on to something. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what are the biggest changes you've seen in the industry? You've been in a lot longer than me.
Well, I would say, like with indie publishing, I feel like when we first started, like that series that I wrote that was like kind of a mashup of everything I ever wanted to write, I feel like we were all like Julie Andrews in the beginning of Sound of Music, where she's running around with her arms out, you know, swinging around. And she's like, we can write anything we want. Yay. You know, we're just so happy. So I feel like that's kind of how we felt in the beginning, or that's how I felt. I was like, I'm free. I can do whatever I want. And I feel like gradually we've transitioned through this time where we are becoming more like publishers. We're thinking, because now we've got the whole right to market thing where people, even I was like, oh, you know, if I just wrote a straight cozy, I would probably sell more books. And it was true. So it's like we're kind of transitioning to this where we take a more publisher-like approach. But I think we have the advantage that we can temper it and say, I might make more money doing this, but I really don't want to do that. So I'll put this different spin on it, but I'll still keep it close enough to this genre that I can make money, you know?
Right.
So I feel like that's a big thing. I feel like there's been the rise of advertising. And, you know, back when I started, there really was no Bookbub. There was nothing that you could do
to get your books in front of people. Yeah, I think that would be mine. You know, I think especially in romance, I think for a long time, and still a lot of authors really depend on that release. You know, to, you know, releasing fast so you can keep your books visible and you keep your income up. And I don't do that. I release fairly slowly. So I have seen more people start to advertise more. People are a lot more advertising savvy, marketing savvy than they have been. I think that's one of the biggest changes just in 2.5 years, really. Really in the last year, that I've seen people really looking at their backlist, looking at all the books they have to make them money, not just that new release. And I think that's true, not just in romance, I guess, but I know, I mean, I really can only speak to romance because that's what I write, but I think that that's one of the biggest changes I've seen.
Yeah,
just
I
in
agree.
2.5 years.
Yeah, I think that's very true. All right, so last question. What's the biggest thing you've done to set yourself up for success? Writing, marketing, whatever you'd like to talk about.
For me, taking that year to learn indie publishing really set me up, and what it helped me do, and then it helped me know that I needed a newsletter before I launched my book. Mark Dawson he used to say that all the time, and I would get kind of mad because I didn't have anything to give anybody, but I was able to get into a promotion that they promoted the first three. Well, it was a preview of the book. Those are harder to do now, but at the time those really worked. And I was able to get 1,200 people on my email list before my book launched. And that helped me to get my book in front of the right readers from day one. And that was huge, just completely huge for me. So I really do sort of attribute most of the success I've had to that one thing, because without that, my book would have floundered. trying to find an audience. And so being able to start with an audience really helped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's
I agree.
fun. What about you?
I think for me, just being willing to pivot and say, okay, this like looking at being traditional and then looking at indie and saying, man, this looks like it could be a really good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just going ahead and doing that. And, but, I would always test things out. Like I tried it with short stories and I was like, okay, I think this is going to work.
Right.
And
because you're pretty cautious. Me, I would have just jumped right in.
But see, you're cautious too. You took a year. So
but
I do
differently.
I'm like very risk averse. So, but like doing that, and then like deciding to launch the new series, the historical, because the prevailing wisdom is a series is good, but a long series is better. So like if you can have 10, 15 books, you can really, you can sell that first book and make lots of money in the sell through. But so I had a couple of series that had 6, 7 books, and I thought, no, I really want to try this historical. So I started with that, and that's basically starting over in a new genre, but I've loved it. And I think it's been business-wise, it's like my best-selling series. So I think just being able to maybe stay on one track and learn what you need to, but then pivot a little bit if you need to switch to something new.
Not being afraid to pivot. Yeah. I think that the authors who are able to pivot are the ones that are going to have the longest success, the longest career, the more success, because things change all the time. And
I was going to say nothing ever stays the same.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're Kindle Unlimited like I am, I mean, we could wake up tomorrow and get it with an email that says things are different 100%. And so the authors that are going to stick it out are the ones that can pivot and not lose their minds.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all going to lose our minds. We're going to be in the fetal position, but it's the ones that can crawl out of the fetal position and do something different are the ones that are going to.
Yeah, I think that's what you have to do. I mean, in any business, you have to be able to kind of go with the flow. And I think publishing has gone from change at the speed of like Ice Age, it's just like glacially slow. And now it's like so fast. It's like things are changing like every week. There's a new trend, a new philosophy, a new thing to try. So you kind of have to roll with it and figure out what works for you. So
and try to not lose your mind.
Yes.
Every time something changes, which is hard. It's hard to do, because our livelihoods are kind of tied up in this. And but I think those are good things to kind of set yourself up for being successful.
Yeah. So, and we're going to ask these questions and similar questions to our guest and get their take on it. And we hope you'll tune in again and get their thoughts and their feelings on what they wish they had known then.
Yes. So we'll see you next time on Wish I'd Known Then podcast.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We hope this episode inspired you, empowered you, and made you laugh a little bit too. If you loved it, tell your friends about it. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We look forward to being with you again next week.